Welcome to the Korea Pro podcast. I'm your host, Chungmin Kim, the editorial director of Korea Pro.
And I'm John Lee, the editor of Korea Pro.
Join us for a weekly 15-minute conversation as we dive into the most pressing stories shaping South Korea and dissect the most complicated ones for you.
From politics to culture, technology to society, we've got you covered. So stay ahead of the curve and never be sidelined again.
So get ready for a fresh perspective on South Korea's news. This is the Korea Pro podcast. It's Thursday, March 28th. We're recording around noon. We just recorded a special guest episode with Joo-min Lee, an attorney based in LA, our star writer and contributor. It will come up on Monday, 4 p.m. So tune in for that. But right now, we are going through some of the many topics for this week. It's
been an eventful week.
It has been. Let's start with what just started this morning, a bus strike.
Right.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time coming. This is the first bus strike that has happened in Seoul in 12 years.
Compared to subway strikes, it's very rare.
It's very rare. And so because this is the first strike in 12 years, and the strike is mostly about wages, the bus drivers have been asking for a wage increase and they're negotiating with the Seoul City government. But what the unions are saying is that their demands were not met. And so the bus drivers said, okay, we are striking. And it's just started today.
So in Seoul, how does this, what's the implication? So there's zero buses? It doesn't seem like it's zero buses.
It's not zero buses, but it's, I believe there are some shuttle buses that are operating. I'm not quite sure how these shuttle buses apply to different people.
During commute hours, they are trying to maintain the numbers to an ideal level.
Right, but there are millions of people in the city, and a lot of them use buses. And so even in our office this morning, it has caused quite a bit of a commuting issue. And I believe that this has been extrapolated throughout the entire city. Now, obviously, we have elections coming up in a few days, less than 2 weeks now, and this could not come at a worse time for the government. I'm sure that the Seoul City government, Mayor Oh Seo-hoon, who is also a member of the ruling party, is getting an earful from the president right now. So we'll see how this progresses.
It almost looks like the PPP has cursed this election. There has been so many
doctor strikes, bus drivers. There's just a never-ending series of incidents.
And talking about election, there was this very interesting pledge made by PPP leader, interim leader Han Dong-hoon about moving National Assembly to Sejong City. Just quickly, what is Sejong City?
Sejong City is an administrative city that's located, I believe, about 80 kilometers away from Seoul. Don't quote me on that numbers right now. I don't have that in front of me. But yeah, moving administrative government administration offices to Sejong is not a new policy. It first began in 2003 when then President Roh Moo-hyun first wanted to move the entire capital city to Sejong.
What was the reason at the time?
Well, at the time, he was saying that there was too much political concentration in Seoul, and there's a lot of
business and infrastructure concentration as well.
Too many businesses and too many politicians all in one city.
And also overpopulation
issues, real estate prices. And so the president wanted to move the capital city to Sejong. But the Constitutional Court in 2004 said that it is unconstitutional to relocate the capital from Seoul. So although the capital city still remains in Seoul, a lot of government ministries have moved to Sejong.
Like finance ministry.
The interior ministry, a lot of these ministries have moved. In fact, the only ministries that have remained in Seoul are the unification, defense, foreign, and gender ministries. And so
and
the courts, of course, and the presidential office. And so there has been a lot of moves, but now Han is saying let's also move the National Assembly. And there is some support for this. I believe that the
and not just PPP leaders.
Sure, I believe Choguk is also in favor of this move. But what's important is that as soon as Han made this announcement, the presidential office also chimed in, saying that Yoon campaigned on this while he was running for office. And so he is in support of this move.
And he also he will instruct relevant ministries to actually actively work on it. And that notice came less than a day after Han pledged
just
that.
Hours after the pledge, really. And so this might have some merits. There might be some arguments that can be made for it in its favor, legitimate arguments. But again, it's all about the timing. Because with this move, it's not just about moving the National Assembly. It's also going to be involving a lot of deregulations of real estate and redevelopments in this capital city area. It's
definitely a real estate headline here.
Exactly.
In Seoul.
Yeongdeungpo, Yongsan, all of these areas can have significant redevelopments.
It's already a very expensive region, Yeouido. And also Han directly mentioned this, saying that we will give Yeouido back to the people so that you can develop this area. And that's a real estate alert.
Right. And I wrote about this for our executive briefing today, this morning. And so if you want to read about it, please subscribe to read more.
And next topic, related as well. South Korea's presidential office did this notice yesterday or the day before, saying that in order to minimize misunderstanding about the intention of 민생 토론회, the debate with the citizens on multiple topics, we will temporarily suspend this. And the context here is that the Democratic Party and Choguk's party have been accusing the president for interfering in South Korean elections by holding these 민생 토론회, the debate, all around across the country. And the allegation was many of these 24 places that he went to for this debate on particular topic was the battleground for the election.
They are all battleground regions. And now, let's be fair. These public livelihood discussions or town hall meetings, this is part of the president's purview.
Yeah.
He can do this. He is the leader of this country, of course.
And he has been doing it for a long time.
And it is his responsibility to be responsive to the people.
Yeah.
But of course, the opposition party, they're also in the right. With all of these discussions, the president has made a lot of pledges. Some of them he might be able to do. Some of them he might just be saying things just to get votes. And for example, trying to redevelop Yeongdeungpo that we just mentioned earlier. And so with that, the opposition is saying, hey, the president is deliberately making all of these pledges right now with the election so close because he wants to help his own party win.
Right. Whether or not the intention was actually there, it is true that it could be read like this from the Democratic Party supporters, right?
It's completely fair to make that argument. And so to have the president say after 24 of these town hall meetings and say, oops, I'm sorry, we're not going to try to cause any more, I don't know, misunderstandings. And so we're going to stop it now. It's
a little too late.
It's not just a little too late. It's barely disguised.
It's just too obvious.
It's too obvious. And it's just, so okay. So
you could have just continued that and argue.
He could have argued that, no, I'm doing my job as a president.
It's not about the election.
It's not about
it's
the
my
elections.
job to talk to the citizens.
Yeah, but he didn't do that. And now because he said that he's going to cease it, now there's this impression, okay, so maybe this was about the elections. And so how much of what he said during this entire town hall meetings should we believe?
So it's just a very bad strategy from my point of view.
Bad strategy should be in their epitaph.
And talking about bad strategy, let's move on to the next topic of interest. I know that a lot of our international readers and listeners are interested to know the updates to this. South Korea's ambassador to Australia, Lee Jong-sup, aka Doju Desa or Hoju Desa, he was in Seoul for how many days? Around a week now, right?
About a week. And he came back and he met with a bunch of other South Korean ambassadors going out to other countries.
UAE and so on and so forth.
Sure. And of course, he also met with his old buddies in the different ministries, the foreign ministries and the defense ministries, so that he could talk about, of course, defense exports. But the fact that he's still here for this long, leaving his post as ambassador vacant right now, that again is going to cause a lot of annoyance in Canberra. They're going to want a Korean ambassador there. Sure. Okay.
Who's dedicated to his role.
Let's be fair. In this day and age, especially after Trump's presidency, ambassadors' roles throughout the entire world, they've been somewhat diminished because, the president of a country can just tweet something out now or, make a phone call. But that's not how traditional diplomacy works. They do want an ambassador who is stable at his job, who is present to be able to go to the Australian Parliament or the Australian Prime Minister and have actual discussions. But that's not happening.
And also, not to mention, ambassadors, sure, they should, the first priority would be to pursue national interest, of course. But global trend right now is that a lot of countries are becoming increasingly nationalistic when it comes to trade.
Right.
Not only trade, other things as well. But defense export for a week in South Korea when he's supposed to be in Canberra.
Right. It's just... The Australian government has already purchased a lot of South Korean defense equipment. Tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, artillery. And this could be expanded. Now, it could be argued that Australia is not really in the position to buy that many more weapons because they're having to acquire U.S. nuclear submarines, and that's stretching their budget a bit. But there is still room for negotiations. And the fact that the former defense minister, who knows the most about this, he went to Poland how many times, the UAE how many times to have these exact kinds of defense agreements. He is the front runner, and he should be at the point to talk about all of this with the Australian government.
And he should already know what's important without these all ambassador meetings, I must say.
But of course, he's back in Korea now, and of course,
What's going on with the investigation?
It is ongoing. It is ongoing, but it doesn't also seem to be progressing at all. They're saying that it seems to be no grounds to call him in for investigations at this point.
Just to remind our listeners, what was the investigation about?
The investigation was about the ambassador's alleged role in trying to minimize the responsibility of certain military officers that occurred in July last year when a South Korean Marine who was part of the rescue operation during the monsoon season had drowned. And so this is an ongoing investigation, and you would think that they would be calling him in to have active discussions while he's here, but they have not called him in. And so he's still here in Korea.
And I'm just going to briefly mention I was at the first foreign correspondent press conference with Choguk, the leader of Choguk Party, Rebuilding Korea Party. Majority of his speeches and Q&A session was focused on prosecutorial power and his own legal battle. But also he did mention Lee Jong-sup in the context of someone asked him, you are saying your main slogan, your party's main slogan is to end the Yoon Suk-yeol government as soon as possible. And someone asked a very good question. Do you mean impeachment? Because impeachment is about illegal actions that are proven.
Right.
So what he said was, it's not necessarily about impeachment. It's more about the dead duck thing right now. He wants to make sure that the president is not empowered by getting as much seat as possible. But he did mention, when that happens, that the majority seat goes to the oppositional parties, they can start looking into potentially illegal actions by the president. And he mentioned Lee Jong-sup there, saying that this could be a start. And I'm like, okay.
He's not wrong about that. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not all that excited about Choguk's return to politics.
Understatement.
But that being said, the fact that he brought up Lee Jong-sup as a potential trigger to have investigations in the Yoon administration, yeah, he's not wrong about that at all. Unlock the full Korea Pro experience by joining our community. Stay informed, stay ahead, and never miss a beat on Korean affairs that matter. Subscribe today and transform the way you understand Korea.
Week ahead. You did write something. It's been a while since you written something on foreign policy. You wrote about U.S. and Japan. What's going on there?
The U.S. and Japan are most likely going to upgrade the alliance.
From what to what?
From what's going to happen is that, firstly, Joe Biden is going to host Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida at the White House on April 10th, the very same day when we're having elections here. Now, I'm not quite exactly sure what those upgrades are going to be, because there's been a lot of media reports from other outlets that said that the alliance will be upgraded. But how this will be upgraded, we will have to wait and see as to what the declaration is going to be. But there is some concern that with the U.S. and the Japan upgrading the alliance, it might be possible that, especially if there's a change in leadership in the U.S., that might somehow downgrade South Korea's importance in this
relatively speaking.
Relatively speaking. Now, South Korea is, of course, an important partner to the U.S., not just militarily speaking, but economically as well. But still, if Japan is elevated, and if there is a change in leadership in Washington, especially if Trump returns, then there could be quite a bit of, shall we say, a change in perceptions.
Hypothetical question, not that hypothetical anymore. From Trump's point of view, what value does he see in Japan and South Korea?
Well, I'm not sure if he sees a value in Japan per se, because when he was president, he didn't really have a good relation with the Japanese government. He had a great relationship with Shinzo Abe. They went golfing together. They toured the Japanese ships together. He got the royal treatment, and we know how much Trump loves to be treated like a royalty.
Right, and someone immediately asked me, like, if Trump comes back, you have to write a story on whether or not Yoon golfs.
well, he'd better learn.
Yeah.
Anyway, because of this potential perception of a downgrade in South Korea's importance if Trump returns to office in November, that's going to cause a lot of headaches in Seoul, and I wrote that analysis, so please subscribe if you want to read more.
And keep an eye on that development. Next in line for the week ahead, what's the latest on the doctor strike?
Okay, doctor strike. This has been going on for weeks, and it seems like it will keep going on for much longer.
Will it end before the April 10 election?
If you had asked me that a week ago, I would have said maybe, most likely, but now I'm not so sure.
Why?
And that's because the Korean Medical Association, which is the doctors' union here in Korea, just elected a new leader. And
Im Hyun-taek,
thank you. His name was escaping me.
Head of Pediatrician Association.
And the reason why this man is important is because he was one of those doctors who was trying to protest against Yoon by speaking out loud or yelling, and Yoon's security guards covered up his mouth, gagged him,
Took him away.
and dragged him away. Now he is the new leader of the Doctors Association.
A hawk.
He is a hawk, and he is in no mood to compromise with the Yoon administration. So even if after the elections are over, this protest will be going on for a long time.
There were some signs of the government trying to be a little bit more lenient, like being flexible about how to treat these trainee doctors who resigned.
Right.
But it seems like the doctor side is not backing down. They have issued just yet another statement saying that this whole policy should be scrapped.
Right. Yoon was telling the prime minister that you should try to find ways to negotiate with the professors as much as possible. But they did. Apparently, that message fell on deaf ears because a lot of those professors decided to join their students and say we are not working, or at the very least we are cutting hours, which has had tremendous effect on patients.
And professors started resigning as well.
Right.
And that's a big deal.
It is a huge deal. People are no longer able to get treatments, surgeries. Patients are suffering right now. And if this goes on for a long time, this could get ugly.
And related, of course, in South Korea, one of the biggest and stable industry here is Hagwon, the private education industry. And their latest focus is medical school frenzy.
Right. And because of this increase in 2,000 seats, which the government plans to start next year, a lot of people are saying, hey, doctors get paid a lot of money. And this country has an aging population. We're going to need more doctors, which means their pay is going to go up even more. And what the government said was that this is part of the government's attempt to compromise the doctors. Yes, we are going to expand the allotment for medical school admissions by 2,000 seats, but it's not going to take place in Seoul. It's going to take place in the provinces. And so a lot of people in the provincial areas, high school students, college students, even those who have already become professionals.
Mid-career professionals.
Mid-career professionals are saying, okay, we're going to quit doing this, or we're going to change course suddenly.
Quit making chips and I'm going to study.
And go to medical school.
Yeah.
And sure, that might be great for, as we've pointed out before, there's going to be a doctor shortage by 2035.
Which is a fact.
Which is a fact. And if all of these people start to go to medical school, that shortage might be improved somewhat.
Right.
But the problem is what happens to the other sectors. Semiconductors is also another field that's very important in South Korea, which is also having a shortage of people.
Brain drain as well.
Brain drain as well. What's going to happen to that industry?
Right. And also a lot of these, like technically, even if they study in the rural area universities, medical schools, they will come back to Seoul at one point.
There's no way you can prevent the migration of people from one part of the country to another.
It's one of the freedoms that we have in South Korea, unlike North Korea.
I don't think even the communists can really control all that much. So
especially when they are doctors.
Right. So good luck with that.
And last one, in the week ahead, campaign starts for the election season. So bring your headphones to work in the next week. It's going to be loud.
It's going to be loud. All the trucks and all the 할머니s and 아줌mas and 아저씨s, they are out on the streets with their banners and they are dancing and singing and not very well.
Right, and they will be, I'm pretty sure they will be changing some lyrics for the K-pop songs as well.
Of course, and the good news is it won't last that long. It's just 2 weeks. So bring your headphones, as Jungmin said. And for more, Jungmin always writes the week ahead, which goes into your inboxes on Monday afternoons. And so please subscribe for more.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why they matter every morning in your inboxes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for your weekly dose of insight. And until next time, I'm Jungmin Kim.
And I'm John Lee. Stay connected, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on the Great Pro Podcast.